Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a breath of fresh footy. And I love weeks like this where teams are playing each other not once, but twice. And I mean, two of the EPL teams had massive games this week. It was Liverpool and Arsenal playing each other both at Anfield twice. And of course, Brighton and Manchester United, which shouldn't be a big fixture, but these days, because Manchester United is the way that they are, it is a big fixture, and that they were very interesting games to observe. Definitely very different in both the EPL and the Carabao Cup. But before we get into it, remember to push the subscribe button on A Breath of Fresh Footy on our YouTube page. Stick a thumbs up on our YouTube page and also our Facebook. And remember, this is where musos give quality information on the soccer during lockdown, and it's a lot of fun. And if you want to research it, we do our research. We know what we're talking about, and it's always great to talk soccer in these times. And I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens during these COVID times because, of course, over in the UK at the moment, the cases are going through the numbers. We don't know what the FA or the EPL or anything along those terms is going to happen. So it's great to see soccer at the moment, but we shall see what happens. And I would love to introduce a new guest who I love playing music with. He's a wonderful oboist in the Orchestra Victoria, always been the heart and soul of that orchestra, just like he is heart and soul of Liverpool. Welcome, Josh, and how are you going?
Thank you very much for those kind words, Mr. Neil. I wouldn't go that far to describe myself as the heart and soul of the orchestra, but thank you nonetheless. It's very kind. I am wondering if I've clicked on the wrong link, though, and if I'm in the wrong meeting. You talk about quality opinions and informed opinions. I'm not sure I can offer either of those two things, but anyway, I'm glad to be along. If I'm in the right meeting and if I'm going to contribute something to this, that's good.
Well, no doubts, mate. I mean, you already picked the result. We've been bantering all year, and you picked the result 3-1. And of course, I should introduce our wonderful Philip, who's the heart and soul of A Breath of Fresh Footy. Lovely to see you again, Phil. That pink background is extraordinarily resplendent. I love it, and I love that I can have the green one and also interpret and have that pink colour towards my logo too. So.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like all those things. You gave me the pink colour. It really reflects off the top of my noodle. It's wonderful to have Josh here today. Apparently, we all have a heart and soul, so it's my turn to say that, Matty Neil, our host, you are the heart and soul of saying the words heart and soul, which you've now we've had it 3 times. Let's put that one to bed and to rest.
Yes, I'll say it a 4th time, the heart and soul, but that'll be it. That's put to rest now. But Joshy, your opinion was right on the money. As I said, you guessed the result in the EPL, and it came to fruition. Bang, so you must be very happy about that.
I did. I just before we address that, on the heart and soul issue, I'm wondering about this background choice of Phil's. I'm wondering if he's actually the heart and soul of salmon. I'm not sure that's actually a pink. I'm debating this colour straight away. I'm a connoisseur of my colours, obviously, with the red of Liverpool and the orange of the Dutch national team, and I'm not sure that's a pink. I'm going for a salmon. Or
you see how the words of these Liverpool fans have changed in the last couple of years. Where were all these put downs like for the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? They were no
words like connoisseur haven't been uttered from a Liverpool fan for many a year, Mr. Phil.
Yeah.
But here we are. No, look, the 3-1. I was pretty confident about 3-1. I just thought Liverpool are strong at Anfield. They've just looked the goods in the EPL, especially this season, and the attacking flair displayed through their defence is something that I'm really impressed with this season. It's gone up a notch. Klopp's teams have always had this ability to hunt in packs, but I think that game against Arsenal, I think was about the strongest I've ever seen that. I mean, Arsenal really couldn't get it out for periods of that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I thought that we were quite battered in that game. However, the most interesting thing for me as an Arsenal fan was because we've done during these last few games, we've actually been able to score goals against you. Hence why this Carabao Cup, that we'll talk about a little bit later, was so interesting with the game because we've been able to get you guys out of the back. But what I noticed that was different between the EPL game and the two previous games that we played was that all of the work that you've done with your signings, even though Thiago wasn't playing in that game, they've really worked on that defensive structure. So they're actually able to sandwich teams in their defence, and they just pressure so much there, and it's a credit to what they do. And then they're just so brutal. Phil always puts the comment of like Firmino playing this sort of fake nine, where he's able to go into the defence, sort of batter, other teams forwards, and then just pushes the ball forward. It's just an impressive style of football. So
yeah, well, they really missed Firmino in the Carabao Cup this morning. I mean, he's the kind of player, when you watch him on TV, you've been looking forward to the game all week, you might think he hasn't really done much, but he makes one or two touches in the middle of the park and it just unlocks everyone else. That's why Liverpool's such a dangerous organism. In that game against Arsenal, Wijnaldum as well. They're the kind of players who, not every time they get the ball will they do something spectacular, but they always seem to do roughly the right thing at every moment. And they can. Wijnaldum isn't exactly like Iniesta. He can't get out of those Iniesta type situations like Houdini, but he does have that in his locker. But he just pulls it out once or twice a game. Firmino is the same. He's not really Messi, but he can do almost Messi-like things or Viduka-like things. So the Carabao Cup game really. We're going to talk about that because. Yeah, that was, although the wrong team clearly won, what a game.
Yeah, I think with the Carabao Cup, in my opinion, Phil, was that I think Arsenal made the right move by playing Gabriel. They just looked so much more solid with him because in the first game that we played without him, the passes that were going from the back line to the midfield, there was a success rate of, I think on average, it was about 35%, which is really, really poor on our end. But it showcases the pressure that, Firmino does and co when they're playing like that. But when they're not there, it's just, it makes a bit of a difference. And I think Gabriel and Leno had a very, very good game because Gabriel didn't have that pressure that was in the EPL game, in my opinion. And so I think because that happened, even though we were still under pressure, there just wasn't that sort of threat that happened in the EPL game. Do you know what I mean? There just wasn't that threat. I didn't feel as uncomfortable, even though I didn't feel particularly uncomfortable in the EPL game. I thought we were going to get battered like 5 or 6-1, and I thought we did a good job to hang on to 2-1 until the 89th minute. So, in my opinion, Arteta's actually sort of got the defensive structures a lot more solid against you guys, and we're at least a bit more competitive. But Liverpool is a big beast. What do you reckon, Joshy?
Well, yes. I mean, you talk about the signings that Liverpool have made, and I think it's important in terms of and this notion of a big beast. I mean, Liverpool's problem last year in terms of overall across the whole competition is obviously very successful in the Premier League, but across all of the other competitions just lacked that firepower off the bench to sustain that kind of pressure. And I think now they have that through those signings and this idea that Phil was talking about before as well, just that structure with your Wijnaldums and Firmino. Structure we talk about in football, in soccer, but also AFL, it gets spoken about, that this idea of a spine down the middle of the park. And I think they give that, and it's almost in AFL terms, you talk about a key forward bringing the ball down to ground for the players around them, and I think in both of those players, Firmino and Wijnaldum, you get that, and that's what Gabriel offers to you overnight as well. It gives you a bit of that structure and that really a solid presence at the in the middle of down the spine of the park to give you some surety in those positions.
I got to agree with that, Josh. And just a quick shout out for Maitland Niles, who man, he had the worst game against Liverpool in the Premier League. Every time he touched the ball, it was wrong. And in this Carabao Cup game, I didn't think he was that good, although he did put a very cheeky penalty away. This Carabao Cup game was for me, it was a weird fusion, sort of hybrid game. It didn't look like an EPL game, partly because there were lots of youngsters, but you never knew what was going to happen next. And you mentioned the AFL there, Josh. It's a game that your typical AFL supporter would have just said there was no goals, so it was boring. But one of the best games I've seen all year, because there was so much fluency and action. Nobody parked the bus. Players were trying tricks, like Curtis Jones did a Rabona cross. I don't think I've ever seen a Liverpool player even, write on his Facebook wall about that. That was very verboten. And so I really enjoyed the game. Lots of shots on goal from both teams. And then Arsenal kind of cheated their way at the end at the penalties and stole it from us. Precious.
But I mean, that's the thing though. That's 2 penalty shootouts in a row, in my opinion, where Arsenal have actually bossed you guys in that aspect. And I mean, sure, it's not the most glorious way to win, but, I'm sure that Klopp really wanted to get Liverpool, further in this cup. They have a great record in it. It's a cup that he hasn't won. He's deliberately strengthened his team to be able to compete in the cups as well as the EPL. I mean, I don't think he's going to be too happy in that sense that they lost. But, I mean, Leno had a freak show game. Really, really did. There's some of those stops that he did, those 5 saves, all of them very critical, but very, 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 very good keeping. And that's probably why, in Arsenal's term, he's our number 1, because he was doing all that sort of stuff and really kept us in the top 10 last year. And he's sort of now starting to find his form. And I agree with you with Maitland-Niles. I think he's a really, really good footballer. But why is he playing left wing back when he's a right footer? Shouldn't he be on the right-hand side actually playing with his preferred foot? He's obviously quality. England would not have called him up to play. But then, of course, I feel with this game, I thought Saka had a reasonable game, had his first English call-up as well. I mean, there's a lot of youth coming through Arsenal that's looking really, really, really good. But the first time in many years where I feel like Arsenal finally have some sort of defensive structure, and I don't feel they're going to leak a huge amount of goals against you guys. Do you know what I mean? For the first time in quite a long time. Josh,
sorry, Josh, but just one thing you said before, that Arsenal's a cup team. They've got that cup mentality, and they're starting to win things, and they win when they're not playing very good football, I think. So, and when you win a penalty shootout in those stressful situations, it could sort of, spur them on. And I think you're right, Klopp would not have enjoyed losing a second time a row on penalties to that guy. Arsenal could be signs, but clearly technically not as good a team, I think.
But I mean, also, would you agree with this comparison, Joshy? It's like Arsenal's basically in Liverpool 5 years ago. We don't have the quality of the squad. We don't have the midfield depth. And we're rebuilding at the moment. And it seems like we finished in 8th spot, just like you guys did 5-6 years ago when Kloppy first came in. I see some similarities in that aspect, that we're trying to build a squad.
Yeah, I think so. I wonder if Arteta is the end product though, or if he's more like the Rodgers. So the guy who takes them close but doesn't. I mean, he's new in his coaching career. Clearly an accomplished player. Clearly understands the game. From what I've seen, I haven't seen a whole heap of Arsenal, if I'm honest. But from what I have seen, he looks like, yeah, as you say, they're assembling a squad. They're not relying on the same old names. They're trying to look to the younger players. They're taking a few chances, and yeah, I mean, even that game, even in the EPL game, and even though they were getting battered, you could see there were signs that they were trying to figure out a structure, a game plan, and trying to work to it. So, and as Phil mentions, Liverpool are just a class above it at the moment technically. But yeah, I mean, it's just, for me, it's just about whether this is the final product in terms of the manager, or whether there's someone else that comes after. to build on a squad that's been put together.
Well, it's interesting, because I see the coaches that are around at the moment with Lampard, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, all those sort of, coaches and managers. And to me, I think Arteta's already done a better job than they have, in the sense that I think he has a worse squad than a lot of these other teams. And yet he's been able to win a cup final. I mean, Chelsea finished 4th, we finished 8th. There's no way we should have won that FA Cup final. But if I was to be completely honest, and I watched that game over and over again, after Pulisic did his hamstring, I thought we absolutely battered them. I honestly thought we played the socks off them. They had no idea how to cope with the back movements, So when we start from the back of the goalkeeper and go along the left wing or the right wing, whatever side they want to, and then they cut it across. They had no answers to that. Whereas at least, with a team like Liverpool, and why they've been so strong, is that teams can come up with all of these different structures, but they find a way to break them down. And it's the quality of the midfield, I feel, as well. Because I feel sometimes, Henderson gets a bit of a rap of not being the best player, but he's a real hardcore, he goes in real hard. He can play decent footy. And that sort of culture that's been brought in there now, with that sort of midfield, and they're starting to add this quality to it. I mean, the game in the EPL, correct me if I'm wrong, but Arsenal was absolutely battered in the midfield, and that's why we lost the game. Whereas I thought in the Carabao Cup, I thought it was a lot more even than what it was, even though I think Liverpool was ahead, because it wasn't such a huge difference in that midfield. I think that's why we were able to stay in the game a bit more, and it meant that people who were defending weren't as tired. Whereas I saw in the EPL game, it just seemed like Arsenal, after the 88th minute, they were absolutely pooped because they couldn't cope with the forwards and the mids.
Yeah, well, there's a massive turnaround. I'm looking at the stats. I mean, the possession even between the two games, you're looking 66%, I think, for the EPL game and 57% for the Carabao Cup. So even as you're mentioning, Matty, just that you're not having to run physically as much to defend the ball. Yeah. There's 10% improvement right there. Either side. So, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that just shows you, because I know that Liverpool had a weaker squad in the Carabao Cup, but they still started with Van Dijk and Salah, who are absolutely quality players.
Well, you've got to say, again, let's go back to Firmino's role. I like looking for those players that are kind of a little bit underrated. You mentioned Henderson earlier. Yeah, he's not a Messi. He's not an Iniesta, but he does something, and he does his thing just at the right time. Without Firmino on the park, Salah had a terrible game. I mean, he didn't get in the game at all. He didn't know where to position himself. He didn't have the normal players that he bounces off. He looked a little lost, to be honest. It was the worst game I've seen him have in a while, and that's because his favourite striker wasn't there, and he knows how to move off him. But that's what I've really enjoyed about the Carabao Cup, actually, is that it's gone back to this, like I said before, hybrid sort of game where it's not all possession based. You don't get 1,000% possession and no shots on target. It's a little bit more random, and every player that they bring in does something a little bit different. Even Van Dijk looked a little uncomfortable on occasions. He almost broke a sweat, I think. And he almost did another PlayStation mistake somewhere. That little flick, and the good players wouldn't be positioned there. But that Arsenal player, just on a whim, decided, he might do this, so I'll go there. And that's the other thing, that different players, they just guess differently. Their intuitions are completely different. Nico Williams had an excellent game.
Yep.
There was some criticism of him, apparently. So bad, it said on KO Sports, that he dismantled his social media account, which for someone born this century must feel very awful. I don't know. Jota came in. Grujic looks like he could step into the Liverpool. What do you think of him, Josh? He looks like, for me, it looks like he could step into the first team if they needed it.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's one of those players, isn't it? And Jota's the one. For me, I think it was a bizarre game in the EPL, and I still don't know what to make of his performance. He's the one that I'm having trouble placing on the back of those two performances about where he fits. Clearly understands football. Maybe it's just he's just understanding his role in the side and how he works. There are a few positional things. He's not quite in the right position at the right time, which is going to happen in the first couple of games. Absolutely, it'll take a few months probably to get all that right. Seems like a smart player though. And Grujic, yeah, similar. I agree. He's just got this a knack about him that seems to know. Well, it's probably coaching. It's probably managing. He understands what the manager wants from him, and he seems to have that figured out already, which is a credit to him or to the management staff as well. Yeah.
Just quick to a good first touch, can see the situation really clearly. Exactly the kind of player I wish I was, but I'm not, unfortunately. And I'm more like Minna Mao, I think. I thought he had another interesting game. He sort of looks very sharp and looks dazzling on the ball, and then he passes it backwards 99 times out of 100. Probably should have scored. I think he smashed into the crossbar.
That's right.
Yeah. But let's just see. It's like a completely different team. I remember watching Man United when they had subs. It still kind of looked like Man United. But Liverpool, I don't know. It didn't really look like Liverpool to me.
Whereas I feel that because the subs that we have, I think we have this advantage given how poor our season was last year. A lot of the under-23s actually played a lot of Premier League football last year. So they were starting to get into this structure of what Arteta was doing with the team. So when you get these people like Nketiah, Willock coming into the team, and Cedric Suarez, who played a number of games before he got injured, because they've played with a lot of these players, because we didn't actually know what our starting 11 was last year, and I still don't think we do. They've been put into these teams already, so they have quite a good knowledge of how they need to play together. And so when you see our first team and then you see our cup team, I can see why Arsenal's hard to beat, because they don't really change a huge amount with what they're playing, except that I think the youngsters have more balls to be able to take the play on a bit more, and they don't try and stop the ball in the middle of the pitch, which I think is a huge problem that we've had. But also, with Jota and these players, they've been great players for Wolves, and they deserve to have their spots in these teams. But it really shows what the pressure of the badge does, because, you're talking Liverpool, you're talking Man United, you're talking Arsenal, the three biggest teams in England. They have the biggest history. There's a lot of pressure that comes playing with these clubs. And it really shows who the true champions are if they can play for these teams and really be stars. Because the pressure can get to anybody, Timo Werner in Chelsea, I don't think's had a particularly good start in, this, sort of league. Because, it's hard. That Chelsea team is going to really find it hard. They haven't played with each other very much. It's a brand new team. And EPL football, even with what Chelsea's done over the last 15 years, there's a lot of pressure to play for the badge and to actually be successful with the badge,
What I fear for with your Arsenal team is they've got a lot of pace. And for me, it seemed like every time, what Liverpool did smartly was every time they looked like they're about to break, they committed a small annoying foul which stopped the break. I think if the pitch was another 20 metres longer, Arsenal might be onto something. And as for the pressure of wearing the badge, well, yeah, many have gone across and failed. Shevchenko famously for Chelsea. There was been a couple that came to Liverpool, right? There was a guy a few years ago, an Englishman, what was his name?
Andy Carroll, Stuart Downing. Who else was there? There was Charlie Adams as well, who was at Liverpool.
Yeah, just that extra bit of zip and pressure, and they're not the number one. They're just expected to kind of do the function that they're there for, a bit like the clarinet as opposed to the oboe. We don't have the pressure that you guys have.
Yeah, that's right.
And I want to take issue with something else, actually, because you've said this a lot. You say the English Premier League is the best league in the world, most competitive. And I'd like to discuss that with Josh. My point of view is the three best players in the world still, Neymar, Ronaldo, Messi, don't play there. That's the number one thing. And when they do play against English Premier League teams, they destroy them.
it depends on the criteria, isn't it?
Mm.
Like as a competition, as an even competition, you could almost maybe it's because we don't follow the other leagues quite as closely as a general rule in Australian society. But you could argue that the weakest, well, I'll pose it back to you, Phil. Would the weakest EPL team defeat the weakest La Liga, Serie A team? I don't know. I mean, in terms of an even competition where you can still have results like Leicester winning and indeed probably at the moment, a top 6, maybe even a top 7 that is fairly close as compared to
Okay.
La Liga or
Well,
yeah.
to that point, I say this. So let's ignore the bottom of the league, although that's very important. Let's look at the middle league. Who wins the Europa League every year? Sevilla.
Yeah.
Perennial 3rd or 4th or whatever they come in the Spanish league. So the middle of the Spanish league, that's strong.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the middle of the English Premier League, they're not winning that all the time. I mean, they do pretty well, but they don't win it.
Mm-hmm.
So the winners of the Champions League and the Europa League are not English normally.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying that?
But do you think that there's with the Spanish league, do they have as many cups that they have to play for during the season as they do in the English? Do they have the 3 like us? Yeah. Of course, yeah.
Yes.
They do. But it's just interesting because why then does the English league have more basically Champions League spots and Europa League spots than the other leagues? Is that a reason to say that, is it money or is it because the UEFA at one stage deemed it as probably the strongest league, therefore it deserved the most spots? I don't know. I don't know the answer to this stuff. But from what I've heard from people and pundits and things over the last 15 years, there was a reason why. It was because it was quite strong, and that's why they've been given more spots. I'm sure that money is definitely involved with it.
And that could help with a Sevilla, for instance, if they're the 4th best side in Spain or whatever. I don't have the figures of where they exactly finished last year, but then they might be challenging the 7th place side of the EPL. So, yeah, you could argue they're both sort of middle to top, but Sevilla, you know, there's that imbalance there. So how would Sevilla go if they're facing the 4th best EPL side, for instance, in the Europa League? Now they don't, because the 4th best side is in the Champions League if they get through and all that kind of stuff. So
Fair
I don't know. It's a very difficult. Well, it's a good point of discussion for forums like this.
Oh, definitely. I guess I've got to
I feel like I need a beer in my hand though to discuss this. But anyway,
I guess it's a reaction because, you know, the Americans used to call it World Series baseball, even though only they were playing, and then they called it the World Series basketball, even though only they were playing. And now the English, because there's more money going through the English game for sure. So they just tell everyone. I mean, their Premier League as a product that gets beamed across the world is the best product. I think that's true. You know, the Italians, because all their pitches are running stadiums, have running tracks, the crowd isn't as close. It simply doesn't look as good on television. That could be part of it. I think the English, they have the capacity to choose better players because of their money from more different sources and countries, and they've let more foreigners in earlier into their league and more thoroughly. So it's sort of a global-looking league. But it's also noticeable that the European champions go and play the South American champions once a year, and the result of that match is not as clear as you would think it would be from all the hype. In fact, often the South American team wins, and they're just slobs who play in South America.
I have an interesting point from this year, just observing and starting the podcast and actually following some of the cups a bit more. To be honest with you, Phil, I've enjoyed the Carabao Cup games a lot more than the EPL games. I've found it a much more open game to watch. I think also with the Carabao Cup games, because there's a lot more unknown players that are playing, coaches and managers just can't all of a sudden just find a video and work out how to play against this player. There's a lot more unknown. So the game is much more natural because it has to be much more intuitive. They can't have that sort of structure. So I've seen in the EPL games in particular, it's been very structured, it's been very regimented, and some of the games have been great, but some have been really poor to watch. All of the Carabao Cup games I've watched, they've all been fascinating. Even the 0-0 against Liverpool and Arsenal, it wasn't a typical 0-0 game because it was so open and there was so much free flow with the product of the soccer. It was really, really good to watch. And I think, it's, in my opinion, it's been by far the best footy to watch so far this season.
I was going to say that everything has been fantastic about it. I think in the EPL as well, the games that we've been seeing, really entertaining brand of football. People are attacking, moving forward as a general rule. Open style of play. It's fast. There doesn't seem to be too many stoppages the whole time and things like that. It's exactly the opposite of the argument happening around AFL at the moment, which is becoming a sort of dirge fest. Nothing happening and. And this all in the background of COVID and no crowds. So the atmosphere is perhaps less, and that sort of, especially Anfield. I mean, you turn on a Liverpool game as much for the crowd and the experience as much as anything else. I mean, you get that real buzz, and you don't have that, and yet still the games are exciting, and you want to watch and you want to be involved with it, and it's really exciting. So maybe that's your answer to the best league in the world. I don't know, Phil.
But I mean.
Yeah.
Also,
just way to throw it open and see what you thought. I don't like things that get tossed around and then suddenly they become a fact. That bothers me. I like to dispute the truth. But yeah, I've got to second you. It's Carabao Cup. I'm loving it. That's my preferred, what do you call it, medium for watching soccer at the moment. Also, because you get unknown players, you don't know what they're going to do. What's that guy going to do when he gets the ball? Oh, he's trapped it the wrong way. Wow. Whereas your regular players, they do it the same way kind of every time, a bit like clockwork.
Yeah, but I also feel with the Carabao Cup, we're getting finally away from this Jose Mourinho parking the bus, and I think at the moment in the AFL, the issue that they have is flooding. It's still this aspect where there's too much possession with too many people around there. It's so clogged up, and soccer has had those issues. But I think now with these new tactics, and especially the way Klopp's going about things in particular, sort of changing this way of playing, Bayern Munich as well, it's much more free-flowing. There's a lot of risk that's with it, but it's really rewarding to watch. And, I think Phil says this a lot of times. When you see your number 10s do things, they normally make the most mistakes, but the beauty about them making mistakes is that they're very creative with the way that they do things. So when that 1 out of 10 thing works and it creates this magnificent goal, that's the whole point of why a number 10 is so amazing. And going back to Arsenal, I think it's a real pity for me to see Ozil the way that he is. He's not part of the team. Willian's playing this fake 10. And he doesn't have that creativity that Ozil has. And it's a real shame that he doesn't fit into the plans. But players like that are the reason why footballers and people who watch football want to watch football. That's why when he signed for Arsenal in 2013, people were lying on the streets celebrating because they wanted to see a brilliant playmaker. And he was fantastic for the first 2 or 3 years. But the style of football that we've played hasn't allowed him to shine at all. And it just makes everything, what I love about the Wenger ball back in the day, that fluid football, that's what I miss, But I see it actually sort of coming back with Klopp's, even though it's not as beautiful, it's very, very effective,
I hope William proves us wrong, but that was a strange move to Arsenal. He's not a number 10. He's an excellent player. He wants to be playing tiki-taka. He's not. I think if Arsenal want to improve overnight, they would just stick Ozil in the hole there behind the front two or front one, and immediately with the squad they have, stuff would start to happen because the midfield's big physically and strong, very hard to get through like a forest. Like you said, they've gone tall.
Yeah. And
Ozil has those. He's just creative, and he's going to stuff it up, and he's not going to do what the coach says every time, but he'll. I mean, his stats. It's bizarre. His stats are really good, aren't they? The number of assists that he provides. Yeah, no one can come close, really.
But that's where I think Liverpool have strengthened over the 5 years, and I think if Arsenal want to go down that path and use Liverpool as a guide on how to actually get your team strong is to get a really core nucleus like what you've done. Left hand, right hand side, in the defense, really, really strong with the wing backs, So then you got this beautiful spine with Van Dijk in the middle with Alisson as a keeper. Then you can really start to go places. And I see at the moment with Arsenal is I think our left-hand side is okay with Tierney. I see Gabriel there as well if they go into a back four. There's the makings of the left-hand side. But, man, Hecky B, what a friggin' joke he was. Hecky B, man, what a disaster he was against you guys. We have no spine on that right-hand side. Really needs to go. And that's where I'm so impressed over the last 5 years with Liverpool's transfers. I think you've absolutely nailed it on the money there, Joshy.
Yeah, well, it's been much spoken about, hasn't it? And the whole strategy of what are the names? FSG or whatever the group that's taken over. Yeah, I mean, their strategy, that sort of buy low, but with a specific purpose. And this is coming back, I was just having thought about this Ozil concept, and we were speaking before about players who maybe haven't lived up to the badge, and you could argue that Ozil may have been one of them because he never really reached the heights as he had at Madrid and Bremen, but he never really, he had a good couple of seasons, I'll give you that, but it wasn't where we expected him to go. Now, I don't think in Ozil's case you'd say that was a badge thing, but I do think it was about perhaps just the wrong player in the wrong system, even in those early days at Arsenal, just maybe not quite the right players. And this has been the impressive thing with Liverpool is they've targeted specific players and they have a really, really, really good understanding of what the system is and exactly the kind of player they want. So they can bring in your perhaps B grade players and make them look like A grade because they just slot into that role perfectly. So you're utilising the best out of everyone. It's a fascinating thing. I don't know how they do it.
I have to agree that left back, the Scottish left back?
Robertson.
Yeah.
Robertson conceded a goal the other night, or he was at fault.
Yeah.
And then what did he do? And you've got to love a redemption. He went up the other end. He took a gamble, got in the box, and scored a cracker. I mean, yeah, that's the Liverpool we live in.
But I think for us,
can't see Bellerin doing that, mate. Sorry.
But that's the thing with us, and this is what I've been disappointed is that we actually had the spine in that 2013, 2014, 2015 years when we had Ozil, Sanchez, and they were going really, really well. All we needed to do was strengthen one more player in the midfield, get another right back to help put this competition with Bellerin, get rid of Koscielny, just a couple of spots. And we would have had a formidable team. But because they didn't spend and they didn't do the right thing with their transfers, that team finished second and then it flopped. Do you know what I mean? Actually flopped the year when Leicester won it. Whereas if they had filled those gaps, I really felt that year when Leicester won the premiership, if they had done the right sort of spending, they had done the right transfers, filled in the right spots, I reckon Ozil and Sanchez would still be at that team and they would be shining because they had this fantastic, attack. But they didn't ever fix their issues, which was the Achilles heel since 2007, in my opinion, was the back four or the back three, whatever they did. They never fixed it. And that's where a lot of teams can learn off Liverpool when they were weak and they started filling the gaps slowly, but they did it efficiently. They did it the right way, bred them in, allowed them to feel a little bit of pain at the beginning going like, no, this is a process. But we can see that when you start adding 1 bit here, 2 bit there, 3 bit there, it's like, when you're cooking and you start adding spices, something that tastes bland, all of a sudden starts to get much more flavours, and you guys...
I've never had that experience, but yeah, go on. Yeah. My cooking tends to start bland and then I taste it and then I eat it and it's still bland. And yeah, sorry, go on.
But you know what I mean, though, like when you've got your core meats, that's why you have your spices, your salts and your peppers, but you've got to get that structure right. And you guys did finally after that chaotic disaster of Kenny Dalglish in 2011 when you got all of these English players and they all flopped, and you were expected to do lots of things. Perfect example of how to get a top team who's been out of Champions League football for a long time to breed confidence and now be absolutely ball winners and expected to make basically the final of Champions League and should be winning trophies all the time, Joshy.
Yeah, and they identify it quickly as well. So because I was just having a look at this left back issue, for instance. So we got Robertson, who's fantastic, but what happens? He can't play every single game. He can't play every league. So what happens when he's not there? Moreno wasn't the guy. Didn't quite, for whatever reason. I thought he was actually pretty impressive when he joined, and he had a few really great games. And you thought, this guy's there, and even the Aussie Brad Smith, who was there for a while, and you thought actually he might have developed into something. He looked like a likely type, but for whatever reason, just didn't quite fit the plans or the structure, or had certain attributes which weren't quite what Klopp wanted. And so they go and get this Tsimikas guy, this Greek left back, 24. I haven't seen much of him play, to be honest with you. So who knows? But you can only assume that they've targeted him for a very specific reason in that role, which is so strong with Robertson there. But they say, no, we need to strengthen that. It's exactly what you're talking about, I think, with Leicester, who just didn't take quite that opportunity, perhaps. Maybe they can't afford it. All these kind of reasons come into it, of course. But Liverpool, I think, the way they approached this transfer period, they were quiet for a long time. And I was sitting there thinking, come on, guys, we clearly need backups. If we want to challenge all these leagues, we need a stronger squad. And all of a sudden, you look at Tsimikas, who I assume is going to be great. Your Jota, your Thiago comes in. Just really targeted transfers that seem to make sense. Now, proof will be in the pudding. We'll see how they go this year, but it seems to have the makings of success.
I've got a question for you. So, unlike cooking, or perhaps like cooking, you add those spices. So it seems like Thiago is a good buy. Although for me, I don't understand, to be frank. If you've got Grealish there, I mean, you're comparing apples and oranges a bit. Who's out the door? The transfer window is still open. Is Origi going? Shaqiri, a player I like very much. Limited chances at Liverpool, but every time he comes on, something happens. What was he called? The Messi of the Carpathians or something like that. He was, or was that Hadji? I get confused. But who's on their way out? Is Wijnaldum on his way out?
Yeah, Wijnaldum, they're talking about in Barca, aren't they? I don't know. That seems to be above average. As good a player as he is, he's fantastic, Wijnaldum. But I'm not. Who knows what?
Player. Yeah.
He is good, and Koeman will have a role for him, I'm sure. That sort of Dutch connection, and there may be a spot for him there. Origi's the fascinating one for me. He's had some stellar performances, and I mean his fabled run in the Champions League, which was just astonishing. I mean that 4-0 at Anfield against Barcelona was the stuff of legends. He will dine out on that, as will Wijnaldum, for years. But he's so interesting, isn't he? I really rate him as a player. I really enjoy watching him play. I think he's got so much flair. He moves so well. He's a presence up there as well. So I don't know.
He's young.
Surely,
he's young.
Sorry?
He's young.
He's young,
and so
he's gonna be hungry. He's gonna want opportunities, and he's not able to get them here. And they're bringing in players like Minamino, and there's still Shaqiri there as well. So where does he fit? I
would have thought Arsenal. I'd love. I mean, much as I like Aubameyang, Matty, I see Origi as an Arsenal player because I don't know why, it just seems to fit.
Yeah, but also, when we're talking about this, the one key aspect that I felt why Liverpool struggled for 30 years before winning this EPL title was that whenever they got good, they always had to sell, or always their best player left. Somehow, like for me, it was a huge loss when Alonso left the team, when Torres left the team. All of these players left the team, but you're able to keep your star players now. I think that's a huge difference. Arsenal's been struggling for 16 years. Why? Because we generally sell our best player and then we have to start all over again. It's the first time that we've kept our captain in the team for 16 years and re-signed him on a 3-year contract. You guys are doing that, and it's the reason why you've been able to keep and strengthen your squad the whole time. I mean, even a team like City have never replaced Company. I don't even think with Diaz, who's the new guy that's in the team, who was apparently now second in Pep's line. He wanted, who did he want from Leipzig again? What's his name again? Starts with U. Oh, what is it? The really, really excellent CB. I'll remember after this vlog, I'm sure. But I don't think they've ever replaced. They don't think they've ever replaced Company. And it's a huge issue because that's what you need to do. You need big players to stay at your club, or you need to find big players to replace those players. Liverpool have done it.
That's the key, isn't it? I mean, and that's the beautiful thing about a successful side and a manager that's well liked. Not only do you keep your players and can re-sign them, but players want to come to you as well. That's the tricky thing, and sometimes that's half the battle. You can keep a squad, and that's one thing, but the squad needs continual renewal and refreshing and enforcing. And unless you can attract players to the club as well, you're always going to miss a part of the piece of the puzzle. And I think Liverpool have got that now. They've got they're an attraction club. They're a destination club, as we call them.
But that's the thing, like both of our teams in our banter eras, what do the big clubs do? And I've said this on a number of podcasts. When they're crap, they still win trophies. The worst I've ever seen Liverpool play footy, they still won a Champions League in 2005, and they absolutely smacked it. It was awesome. They find ways to win trophies. They won FA Cups. Arsenal, our banter era, we still won 4 FA Cups. I mean, sure, it's not a Champions League, but it's a trophy. Good teams, when they're bad, still find ways to make their club successful somehow. You know what I mean? I know that hoodoo of the 30 years was a huge thing to be lifted off Liverpool, but there's a reason why. And I really think it's that aspect of that you've been able, in my humble opinion, you've been able to keep your best players. They don't want to leave. They want to sign extensions. Then you can fill in the gaps. And I think for teams like Arsenal, Man United, the only way they're ever going to get good again is if they can keep their top players.
Well, this is what Josh was saying about recruitment as well, that you're a player, right? And a coach says, look, you don't have these qualities, but you have these qualities. I have a spot in my team where your best qualities will be on display and you'll be able to express them all the time, every match, because I want you to do exactly what you're good at. And like, you would never look at that Liverpool team and think someone is playing out of position, would you? You never think they might be more suited to the middle or the back or the front. No, they look like they love being exactly where they are. The transformation of Everton, since we're talking about recruitment and coaches and the way they can, alchemy. I think I'm going for Leeds this season, but I will definitely be watching every Everton match because I love what I'm seeing there. And talk about the rebirth of a player, James, if he doesn't get injured. He wasn't used that much at Real Madrid, and now he's sort of conducting the orchestra. He's gone from second bassoon to maestro in one little short walk across. And
with all due respect to second bassoonists, Matty.
I think it's been like 2 years since I've actually played proper second bassoon. It's been that long.
Yeah. I heard you'd never done it, but
but that's going to be, the best, and we'll finish up soon. But I think this year, for the first time in nearly 30 years, the best derby is going to be the Everton and Liverpool derby by far. And the only reason why I think Liverpool will beat them is because Everton's still working on fixing their defence. They leak goals. But Ancelotti's all over it. I'm sure within a year or two, that's going to be all sorted. You know what I mean?
I don't think Liverpool knows how to play against Everton. I don't think they've got any clue. I don't think that they haven't seen a player like Richarlison, for example.
Oh, I love it.
This guy is just getting better and better, and James can do nothing. Like, I watched Messi this morning play for Barcelona. It was raining. It was windy. He looked miserable. He wasn't moving. First half, barely touched the ball. Second half, he'd gone through some, cogs in his brain. They even went down a player. Longley got sent off. And then Messi just did 2 or 3 things, and they won the game. And I think James might be a bit of a player like that. In that way, they're sort of non-English players, because in England, you're only doing your job if you're moving and working. Whereas these other players are allowed a bit of freedom. So what's Kloppy going to do against James, I wonder?
Yeah, what are you?
It's that full front three, isn't it? The James, Richarlison, and Calvert-Lewin.
Oh,
he looks fantastic.
Yeah.
all of a sudden. And again, it's probably just this thing. He's probably always been bubbling away. Okay, he's young. He's got the natural development anyway. But Ancelotti's seen him and said, that's where you play. And he's got it worked out. They're looking good. And Ancelotti came in. I was just looking back at the fixtures because I remembered, I think it might have been one of his first games, I think, Ancelotti. He played Liverpool. And I was just seeing it's, I think, FA Cup, I think. It was one of the first games at the end of last season. Or, yeah, earlier this year, I think. And, it was 1-0 at Anfield. And I remember watching that game. I've forgotten the details of it, but it was a close game. It wasn't comfortable. I think that's what you're referring to, Phil. It's going to be uncomfortable against Everton, and it's going to be a great Merseyside derby.
Absolutely. And I think, and I was doing my top 6 prediction this year, and we'll finish off with who you think is going to be in the top 6. I thought Everton would definitely make the top 6 this year with their signings, because I thought that they've done enough to do stuff. They don't have to play European football either, so their squad's going to be a lot more fresh. They can do what Chelsea did when they won the Premiership. They can target people also in that January period to strengthen their defence. I reckon they're going to be nearly a shoo-in for the top 6. So your thoughts, Joshy, on the top 6 of what you've seen? And and I want to get your prediction, actually, of what do you think the derby's going to be like when you play Everton, because I'm intrigued. Because if you're saying it's a 1-0 in that FA Cup game, I don't know if you're going to be feeling particularly confident in beating Everton this year.
No, it'd be interesting. I don't know when. I'll have a look in a minute to see where the first time we play is. If it's across the road over at Everton, that might be a bit of a struggle. But I think we're going well enough. If it's soon, I think we're going well enough. And we've got just enough experience on them probably for now. So if it's in a couple of weeks, I'll double check that in a minute. Yeah. Top 6, what have we got at the moment? Leicester, Liverpool, Everton, Aston Villa, Arsenal, Crystal Palace. Well, I reckon Villa and Palace are going to struggle to stay there for the entirety of the season. Look, I think at the moment, on current form, it's hard to go past Leicester and Everton staying in that top 6. Liverpool, I think, will be there. It's certainly in the top 6. And Arsenal, I'm happy to give you that one, Matty. I reckon you might just get top 6 this year. I think Chelsea and City probably come into it. Tottenham, I'm not so sure of. And I just don't know. I don't know if Mourinho's quite figured out exactly what he wants to do with Tottenham. So that'll be fascinating. But I think definitely, if I can say Chelsea and City coming in for Villa and Palace, I think that's probably a pretty solid.
And I agree with you. I reckon United, I remember when I did mine and I thought United might be in that 4th spot. I really think they're going to struggle this year. They look really poor. They look very slow. They look very lethargic. And the problem is, I think one of their best players, Matty, who's awesome, who's 32, has great skill. He looks really slow. And I remember Phil commenting on this, like, even you admitted in the game, because you love that guy. You even said that he was slow.
He looks slow. Just on that, I mean, United look like they have great players, but they don't have an Ancelotti or a Klopp letting their abilities come out. So they don't work like an organism. They're not playing good footy, I would say. Even though they keep bringing Rashford off the bench and he wins games for them. What a great player he is. Wow. But
they were so lucky against Brighton, though. I mean, I mean that was absurd.
Yes, that wasn't the Manchester United, even the shadow Manchester United.
No,
for my top six, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm leaving Man City off the list because I just hate watching them play at the moment. I love the way Leicester smashed them. I thought they were boring and stupid. And so I've got Liverpool, Everton, Leeds, Leicester, Wolves, because I really want some of these lower teams to... Wolves have a great coach and a great squad, even though they lost Jota. And Chelsea, because I think Chelsea will gel eventually if they don't sack Lampard by Christmas.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see how City played. I thought that, because I watched their game in the Carabao Cup, I thought they actually played much, much better. It was much more open that they played this week in particular. And it'll be really interesting to see with City how all their players who are COVID positive or injured come back into the team. I think it's a huge, huge, huge difference at the moment. That's why I'm sort of scared playing them.
Speaking of which, Matty, notifications have been coming through while we've been doing this that apparently Trump has got COVID. So there's a bit of breaking news. So I know that will devastate a lot of us.
It's
Man.
light a candle, but it doesn't have any bullets in it.
Anyway, sorry, Matty. The top 6 to more pressing issues. How are you looking for this? What do you reckon?
I think at the moment, I reckon. See, Leicester for me. We'll see how they go. I don't know how they're going to cope with the rest of the season because, I like them. But the depth of squad, I think this season's going to be a killing factor.
You're right. If Vardy gets injured because he's a quick player, hamstrings, yeah.
So that's why, the top 6 teams generally, I think, normally will finish there. And this year, I think it's going to be really prevalent. And I see... For the first time in a long time, Arsenal's got some depth in their squad. I mean, they're able to beat Liverpool again in the cup game, which we're seeming to do much better in, and it shows that there's depth. So I think we'll make it in there for sure. City, I think, because even though they haven't done particularly great at the beginning of the year, they've only played 2 games, they still look good. They've got lots of players to come in. I don't see United in there at all. I think they're too weak. I think they're a bit of a... But Everton... Definitely, I see they don't need to have a deep squad because they're not playing European football. So that's going to be fascinating. I think Liverpool will... I'm changing my mind. I thought City was going to win it this year, but you guys look unbelievable. You look really, really unbelievable. And Chelsea, well, that's going to be an interesting one because if they don't gel with the way that they're playing, they were particularly poor against West Brom. West Brom should have won that game. They got robbed in the end from that game. I mean, if they don't gel together, I think Lampard's going to be the first chopping block, because they've spent so much money. I don't think they're playing very well. And I don't think Lampard's the right person to lead them. As much as we love him as a footballer, I think Arteta's a better coach than he is and a manager. He's already proven. He beat him in a final, and we had a rubbish squad. So there's a lot of pressure on him. So I think, those teams, I think all the main 6 except for United's going to be out, and I would put Everton in there. I just don't like the way Spurs are playing. They're the biggest banter club ever. If we're a banter club at Arsenal and Liverpool when we've been banter clubs, that is one bottle job FC club I have seen. No, seriously. Because
Bottle Job FC.
Like Bottle Job FC. With a team that good with Pochettino, how the hell did they not win a trophy? This is the key thing. This is what big clubs do. When they're good, they win lots of trophies. When they're bad, they win trophies. And Tottenham don't know how to do that. It's like in their DNA. They might as well just be the most cursed team ever. Because look what happened.
We just got to wait on Bale. I think that's the unknown, isn't it? It's the unknown.
Well, now Son's got a hamstring problem.
Yeah.
Kane usually gets injured.
Yeah.
Moira is a great player in my view, who isn't in the right position. Bale is 31. Like he himself said in an interview, he doesn't expect that he'll be the same player. He's not going to bomb up and down like he used to, but he can just hit the ball from anywhere.
That's the thing.
As hard as anyone I've ever seen. So I agree. I hope Tottenham comes good, and they've been showing signs for sure. But will they? Yeah.
They need to win. I'm sorry. They need to show that they're a real team. And I mean, in this Carabao Cup, they have the best run out of all the top teams because they're playing Stoke in the quarterfinals. If they don't make the finals with this Carabao Cup, I'm very happy to call them the biggest bottle jobs in England since the beginning of the EPL. Seriously, they should have won something, and like the fact last year that they finished 6th ahead of us, right? Yet we won an FA Cup and made them play all these playoffs just shows you how poor that club really is. They should be pumping us, They should be doing everything like that. I don't know. I don't get it, Joshy. I just don't.
Well, Phil's had enough of your opinions, obviously. He's dropped off the line. No, he's frozen something. Yeah, no, look, I agree. You make a valid point. How they didn't win, anything really, did they? Did they win anything under Pochettino? How they didn't is beyond me. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I mean, Champions League, they have a good run through the final, but then ultimately get exposed, and that should have been a more competitive game. And
Yeah.
Liverpool did the same the year before, and maybe it's experience, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I agree. It'll be interesting. I hope they come good, but
But that's the thing, isn't it? And we'll finish off on this note. But I mean, that's the difference between all of our clubs. When we're bad, we still win things. When we're good, we absolutely punish it, and it proves that fourth place is not a trophy, doesn't it? It really proves it. Arsenal had so many years at fourth place, and they made Champions League, but did nothing in there. And it really cost the culture of the club over that period of time. That's why we got weak, because we never improved. Whereas when players see teams winning trophies, winning silverware, doing something, you're more likely to get more satisfaction with the fan base. You're going to see more success, because it's impossible to stay in the top four in the English Premier League for more than 10 years now because of the money that's thrown in there. So I think it's going to be really fascinating. I'm really liking seeing Liverpool do well, play really attractive football. I mean, I know that we like to banter against each other. I did go for Liverpool at one stage of my life. I thought they were great when they were with Steven Gerrard. Might have been their weakest time, but he was the heart and soul of that club. And that's what's been able to stay with that club. There's a lot of heart, there's a lot of soul. They're absolutely killing it. And yeah, I think now you guys are going to win it. I really think it's strong.
Merseyside derby in a couple of weeks at Goodison Park on the 18th. So that'll be a cracking game. Let's touch base after that, Matty?
What do you reckon? Do you reckon you guys can beat them 2-1 or something? What would you go as a scoreline?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with 2-1. In fact, it may even be 3-2. I think it'll be a high scoring game. There'll be goals for sure. I think we will pip them in the last 10 minutes of the game. How about that?
Awesome.
There's a prediction for you.
Awesome.
Last 10 minutes. I reckon we'll get them. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've been already correct with one prediction. I wouldn't put it past you at all. And thank you so much for being here, Joshy. And of course, Phil left because internet connections. That's all good. We're a breath of fresh footy. This is live, and it'll be recorded and put onto YouTube. That's why things happen. Remember to subscribe to it. Follow the EPL and the Carabao Cup with us. We'll get Joshy back on after that Everton game. I might even bring my Everton fan along, and then you guys can banter with each other. That'll be awesome, and lovely to see you. Keep safe during these times. We're so fortunate to be in Australia, where even though we've had terrible lockdowns in Melbourne and stuff, our numbers are so low, and we're all grateful to be in a country that's pretty COVID free, considering where most other places are. So subscribe to A Breath of Fresh Footy, the best way to connect with the fans, and things, because we can't be at the games. And we hope to see you again very, very soon, Joshy.
Thanks for having me, Matty. Been a privilege. Thank you.
Catch you soon. Bye, everybody.
Good on you.